Hey everybody, welcome back to another Coinsider live stream. And in today's Alpha Hour, I'm here with CH, the senior social media manager of Bitget, and a good friend of mine that I met in Taiwan a couple years ago. So today we have a really interesting conversation in stream. One sec, I just had to make sure that this was working. Um, We're going to talk about a few juicy topics. One is Bittensor TAO, a kind of one of the best projects in the AI crypto space. And then I'm going to talk about CH's unique views on the crypto markets and macro. Just being a well-read person, but also being like one of the leading reps of one of the best exchanges out there. So CH, could you give just a quick intro for those who don't know you yet?
Absolutely, Kevin. Thank you so much for having me. It's an honor and a pleasure to be on Coinsider. I've always been a fan. I've been in crypto for 7 years now, and so of course, you, Coinsider, one of the top dogs in the industry, and so it's amazing to, of course, meet you, become friends, and now have the honor of coming on your stream. So it's great to be here. But my little intro. So, like I said, I've been in crypto for 7 years. Before crypto, I studied business, and then I had different jobs, and I did a lot of sales, a lot of kind of interpersonal stuff, a lot of business stuff. And then I got into commodities. I was actually in the gold business before I got in crypto, and I worked for a gold refinery. And so I learned everything about the commodities sector, specifically the gold industry. And it's funny because I went from the oldest sector, oldest commodity to now the newest commodity, the digital commodity, right? But Bitcoin made a lot of sense to me when I first learned about it, of course, understanding gold's components. So I got into crypto, and unfortunately, in that the first thing I ever learned about or got into actually ended up being a rug pull. As I'm sure many of our viewers here, we have to pay tuition to be in crypto, right? But it was that opportunity that got me into reading about crypto. And I think for me, before I got in 2018, in 2017 we had that big ICO run, and all I had read about crypto, it was just these article titles of like Warren Buffett says it's rat poison squared. And so I'm like, oh, if Warren Buffett says it, then for sure it's BS. It's terrible, right? And never split the time to do the work, and unfortunately missed out on that boom. But either way, the following year in 2018, I started to read about crypto. I started to learn about it, and I just went down this rabbit hole. And so, as you can see behind me here, I'm also a creator. I'm a content creator, and so I titled my channel "The Crypto Rabbit Hole," but it really is a rabbit hole that you fall down in. Right. No matter your interests, your hobbies, your whatever it is that you believe in, there's always a way through to you via Bitcoin. Right. Maybe you're a philosopher. Maybe you're an investor who wants to make a ton of money. Maybe you're a liberal fanatic. All these different, paths forward with Bitcoin. Right. It's multidisciplinary. So I think that's super, super cool about Bitcoin. But of course, that led me down a path of learning about alts and investing into altcoins and really just going through the ups and downs. And in 2019, I started to work with a project out of Switzerland, out of Zug, Crypto Valley, called Velis. Velis is a layer 1 Solana fork blockchain. Back then this is in 2019. They were saying how it's going to be AI, based blockchain. Anyway, it's a lot of hype. But the founder behind it is a guy named Alex Alexandrov, who is the founder of Coin Payments. And this is a massive company. They do like $30 billion in volume. And I had a chance meeting with him in Asia, actually. And this is back when I was still doing a lot of sales. And he was like, hey, if you want to do some marketing with us, we'd love to have you on board. And so I started to market them in Asia, started to raise capital for them. They had a Masternode program. And I was able to raise a substantial fund, but I was paid in this token. And I got in when it was like sub 50 mil market cap. And in 2021, as you know, everything exploded, and Velis went to over $1 billion in market cap. And so that was really the first time my life transformed. I got to experience really the wealth transformation, wealth effect of cryptocurrency. And, I had financial freedom at that point.
For
And
sure.
so, at that point, like all I talked about was crypto. I was like, this is the tool, man. This is how the average Joe gets an edge. You got to get into crypto. Like, what else are you going to buy? You're going to buy bonds and just sit on it? Like, no, you gotta take some risk, right?
Yeah.
When you're in your 30s, 20s, like you just got to go for it. But anyway, so that's how in 2021, I was just sitting on this pot of gold and I was like, what do I want to do with my life? And a bunch of my friends were like, you actually should look into starting YouTube. And I was like, actually, that's a great idea. And then I just fell down a rabbit hole of learning about content creation. And it's been a wild journey, but that's kind of where I am, but,
Sure.
but maybe to do one more thing is in 2022, obviously with FTX blowing up and everything, everything crashed, and luckily Bitget saw one of my videos because I've been making content for about a year, and that's how I got my job at Bitget, and it's been a great journey.
Awesome. So I want to ask you more about that later in the stream. There's a lot of juicy topics I want to ask you today, but I want to start with really the star of the show today, and that's Bittensor TAO, because I know like that's one of your highest conviction, longest term bets, and it's arguably like one of the flagship projects in the AI crypto sector. So let's not assume that the viewers know everything about it. So can you just give a quick like couple minutes overview first before I dive into some more specific questions and more like recent stuff?
Yeah, sounds good. So I think to start, let's not look at Bittensor first. I think let's look at Bitcoin first, because Bitcoin is the 0 to 1, right? It's the granddaddy of everything that we know of in the industry, right? So what is Bitcoin? Bitcoin is the first truly decentralized network where using incentives and aligning incentives, you're able to get miners and people from all over the world to contribute their resources to achieve a common goal, which is to secure the network, right?
Mm-hmm.
In a nutshell, that's what Bitcoin is. But inherently, nothing productive comes out of Bitcoin. It's very important, don't get me wrong, to secure a network and have a network that you can't inflate away. Obviously, it solves a lot of problems like monetary debasement from central banks. It could be a hedge against inflation. It's digital gold, so on and so forth. I won't bore you with the Bitcoin stuff, but it's really important to understand the value prop of Bitcoin for you to kind of see what I see with Bittensor. Okay. Now, like I said, nothing inherently productive comes out of Bitcoin, right? But again, it's very important. And this is why it's gotten so much adoption, right? And there's a lot of attention around Bitcoin. And now this is really the first year where the US government is now, publicly bullish and they're going all in on it. But we'll talk about that down the stream, I'm sure. But let's go back to Bittensor. I think Bittensor is the next iteration in that the founder of Bittensor, or should I say the founder of OpenTensor Foundation, is a guy named Jacob Steve, who is a Google engineer, ex-Google engineer, AI engineer, who is a massive Bitcoiner, right? And so he essentially took Bitcoin's philosophies and essentially the way the network is constructed, and then he applied it on AI, because he's thinking like, okay, as an AI engineer, how do I then make AI permissionless? How do I make it censorship resistant? Right? All these different components that Bitcoin has, how do I then apply that onto AI? Okay, and so that's what he has done. And so Bittensor mirrors Bitcoin's tokenomics. It has 21 million tokens total supply, right? It follows a halving schedule, in which, by the way, the first halving is coming, I think, now in January of 2026. So Q1 of next year coming up, that's going to be the first halving. So if there's any indication of Bitcoin's halving schedule and price appreciation, you can also speculate that Bittensor will likely follow the same trajectory. Okay. So I think the Bitcoin tokenomics is actually what really resonated with me initially. I actually saw somebody post about this on X. It was like, Anon, this is the Bitcoin of AI. And I was like, what is this? He's like, it's 21 million. It's the same as Bitcoin. I'm like, wow, I come across a ton of projects, and I haven't seen any tokenomics that obviously resembles that of Bitcoin, right? And I've invested in projects where, several billion in token, and, it just gets inflated away. And then there's a lot of dilution. And next thing I know, my token is worth next to nothing because it's just been dumped on, right?
Right.
There's a lot of that kind of stuff in crypto. And so I think tokenomics, of course, is very important. And that's how I kind of fell down the initial rabbit hole with Bittensor. But seeing that, I then went down to see, okay, what is it that this network is producing?
Right.
Okay. Bittensor, you can think of, how Bitcoin has proof of work?
Yeah.
Bittensor essentially has proof of useful work. Okay. Any miners who come on the network who want to earn TAO, you need to provide your resources to then have some sort of AI output. Right now, it's just AI output, but you can think of Bittensor as just incentive mechanisms, pure and simple. It's just incentive mechanisms. And as Charlie Munger has famously said, show me the incentive and I will show you the outcome, right? Incentives run the world. Think about any business transaction, any contracts. What does it come down to? It comes down to, what are your incentives? What is it that you're trying to achieve? Why did you start a YouTube channel? You have incentive to build a following, to make a living. Everything comes down to incentives. And so I think what Bittensor is doing is by using crypto incentives to then align and coordinate resources from all over the world to produce cutting edge AI output. Simple as that.
That makes a lot of sense. Go ahead.
Yeah. So that's essentially Bittensor in a nutshell. And now, as I'm sure we'll dive into, there's over 80 different subnets. So each subnet has a specific AI use case, right? It solves a specific problem. And actually, I think what's really fascinating is because it's decentralized, because it's permissionless, the subnet owners who come on, they have to design the incentive. And if you don't know how to design incentives, you can bet that miners will come and take advantage of you, and you'll probably trash your subnet. And it's a competition, right? It's free market dynamics. So it's like, essentially it's what's the word? It's like king of the hill. Like if you like, you need to produce really cutting edge stuff and be competitive for you to stay in the game, or else you're going to get kicked off the network. That's as simple as that.
For sure. So I want to ask you about some examples, because I know when I first looked into Bittensor, one of the big criticisms was that all the subnets and apps per se were very rough around the edges. But it's been over a year since then. It's probably been like a year and a half since then. So I know things are much different now. So can you give some top examples of really cool or useful apps that are deployed on their own subnets per se?
For sure. One subnet that I think is really cool is subnet 33 called Bitmind. And what Bitmind does is they do deepfake detection. And now, by the way, if we just look at deepfake as a problem, it's a massive problem, right? There are billions of dollars that are lost every year because of deepfakes. There was a very notable case in Hong Kong. I think that was happened a few months ago, where a employee of a big firm got scammed out of $25 million because he thought his CFO was FaceTiming him and asking for funds, and it ended up being a deepfake, right? But if you're looking at deepfakes as a company, how do you monetize deepfake detection? It's a very hard thing to do, very, very hard thing to do. And if you're thinking from a centralized company, if I make a deepfake detection AI or technology, how do I know that the AI's down, the deepfake technology is going, that I can keep up with the developing AI technologies? As a centralized company, it's very hard for me to gauge the threat that's out there to make sure that I can effectively detect these deepfakes and solve a problem for our users. That's a centralized, top-down approach. But what Bittensor is doing, what Bitmind is doing, is using miners from around the world. They provide an incentive of TAO, and they have a plugin, by the way. It's a very simple plugin that you install in your browser. And if you're scrolling on X or whatever website, if you come across something that you're like, oh, is this a deepfake? All you got to do is just tap on their plugin and just click detect, and it'll show you the probability of how likely this thing in front of you is a deepfake. And by the way, they have over 90% accuracy, which is literally the best in the world. There was a paper that was released a few months ago, and they studied Bitmind's output in AI detection is it far surpasses the next best centralized entity, which is like 84% accuracy. Bitmine is at over 90. So it's literally the best AI detection in the world. Now, how is this possible? It's not because Bitmine, the company or the owner of the subnet, is a genius and he developed this technology. No, it's actually because he used token incentives to align people from all over the world who can provide the most cutting edge, whether that's resources or whatever it is, to align the coordination and make sure the deepfake that they're detecting is cutting edge. So I think that's
really
super cool.
Really
that's one use case, right? That's one of 80 different use cases that are currently live. Of course, there are many of them that's BS. It's just like coming on the network, they're trying to get emissions. But if you look at the top 10 subnets, there's a lot that's just very promising, but then also garnering a lot of users.
Like, can you give us a second example? Bitmine number one,
another
two, that's really fascinating.
Another one is I thought it was really cool is a Dippy. Dippy is a companion AI, and they have over 600,000 users, and it's massive, right? It's a companion AI, so it's like a chatbot where you can talk to, and it's like your friend, right? I don't know if you use this, but like I did before, and then I started to read up on it. You know the movie Her?
Yeah.
Her. Yeah, it's literally that in real life. So it's like you have this chatbot that you talk to and it becomes your friend. And, you know, I think a big use case, of course, it's like lonely men at home. They chat with this bot, and they're like, they get emotionally involved. Right. And that's kind of the plot of Her. Right. But like there's a company that Google bought. What is the name? There's a really big company. I got to look at it, but it was purchased for, or should I say the founder of that company, Google paid like $1.something billion just to get him back to work on DeepMind at Google. And that company has raised billions of dollars. A lot of these like centralized AI companies are worth billions of dollars. And what Bittensor is doing is he's kind of like just decentralizing a lot of these companies and then allowing people from all over the world, again, to contribute and build upon it. And if you look at Bitcoin, just for example, right? Bitcoin as a network is bigger than 5 of the biggest private banks combined. Obviously, it's 15 years in the making, but what does that tell you? It tells you if you are able to align incentives and have a successful coordination across the world, you can build something that is truly decentralized and organic because it spreads like wildfire in a virus, right? And AI being the most important technology of our lifetime, and there's a lot to be said about how AI needs to be censorship resistant and needs to be transparent. Because right now there's a lot of problems with centralized AI, and I made a whole deep dive video on this. But essentially, there's things like biases, there's things like lack of transparency. All the training, everything happens in a black box. You don't know, why the AI derived its output with a lot of these centralized models. So there's a lot to be said why it needs to be decentralized, because people are like, oh, we don't really need decentralized. Actually, on the contrary, you actually do. Think about it. If you are always using ChatGPT and then everything you do on the AI, maybe ChatGPT at the end is just trying to sway you into making a purchasing decision. Everything that you do, they're just trying to make money off of you. Maybe that's not the best for you, right? And that's one use case. And do you really want someone like Sam Altman to control, the most powerful technology? I think, history goes to show us if those who have absolute power will corrupt absolutely. So, I think this is also why Bitcoin was given birth, right? You have the central banks corrupting the system. And I think now with AI, this is the next iteration. And I think Bittensor makes sense. And also, I think if you think from first principles, there's something called the Pareto distribution. And this is true across all markets, right? You have the, let's just look at the crypto market, right? 80% of the liquidity, essentially 20% of the top projects will take up 80% of the liquidity, right? The 80-20 rule. That's the Pareto distribution. And that's true across Bitcoin or crypto. That's true across equities. That's true across commodities, gold being the biggest, right?
Yep.
And so if you look at that and you extrapolate that and you apply it to the crypto AI sector, Bittensor is at the very top. It is the king of crypto AI. And if there's any indication and lessons learned from that, is that the winners will keep winning. And the smartest devs within AI, not even just crypto, it's like AI devs, they're now coming onto the Bittensor network and they're mining and they're contributing and they're earning emissions. And you just see just some of the smartest people are all coming. I know Dippy, that companion AI subnet I was telling you about, their founder, I was talking to them. They were like, we have guys high up in Anthropic that are mining on our network on their weekends.
Dang,
like,
that's crazy. That's crazy.
So like, yeah, go ahead.
Or go ahead, finish your thought there.
No, I was just finishing up to say, like, I think just overall, I've been in crypto for this long, 7 years. I just haven't found anything where the tokenomics makes perfect sense. The value proposition makes perfect sense. And you have a truly decentralized, not like just VC coin top-down approach, but like what Open-Tensor Foundation is trying to do is they're actively decentralizing and trying to step away from the network. But, just like Bitcoin, when it first started, Satoshi, you couldn't just step away in year one. He had to incubate and he had to make the network flourish before he could step away. So he stepped away in 2011, right? 3 years into Bitcoin, or two years, however way you want to see it. From the release of the white paper and the network going live, Satoshi spent like 3 years before he can actually actively leave. So this is what Bittensor or Open-Tensor Foundation is also doing. They are actively looking to completely decentralize the network, where actually later on they will have no say at all. Like, they want to truly decentralize it, because again, the founder of Open-Tensor, Jacob Steves, is a massive Bitcoiner, and he's applying everything good about Bitcoin onto Bittensor, the next iteration of the AI decentralized network.
Thank you. That was a great explainer. So one thing I'm wondering, a really quick question is, for all these different subnets, do they all have their own tokens as well? Or how does that work?
So yes, so only about a month and a half ago did the Dynamic TAO upgrade come to be. I need to step back a bit and maybe explain why this was needed. Before Dynamic TAO, right now, by the way, each subnet, like you said, has its own what they call alpha token. Okay. Before Dynamic TAO, it was on essentially miners would create the incentive, and then there would be validators. Sorry. Let's go back. It's subnet owners who will create the incentives, and then miners and validators will come and work together. Miners will create the actual output, and validators will judge the miners' output to return the best output to the users, and then they will grade it. And again, it's free market, competition. But actually, that created a lot of bureaucracy and politics, because instead of marketing to the mass market, essentially, some owners would then start to market to validators to have some sort of backdoor deals, which is not okay. You don't want that kind of stuff to go on in your network. You want the free market, the free market dynamics to really take place. And so what happens, and also another thing is, you can't just bet on specific subnets. You have to bet on the whole network. And there were some shady people who came out on the network. They were just freeloading, and they were mining, and they were jumping, and there was just a lot of that kind of stuff. When any new network, when they're first starting, you're going to experience this kind of stuff. There's a lot of trial and error, a lot of experimentation. And so about a month and a half ago, Dynamic TAO was launched to combat all of this. And as we're seeing now, actually, it's completely solving this problem. Now subnets are incentivized to market to the masses and to try to attract TAO holders to come and deposit liquidity, their TAO, into their pool, because it's kind of like a Uniswap pool where you have to deposit your TAO to get this alpha token, and then you'll get emissions as a reward. And their APRs right now are crazy high. I don't know if you've looked at the subnet returns, but there's a full-on raging bull market in the subnets. Like, there are in the past month, there are subnets that have gone like 10x just within a month. It's crazy. You should take a look. And they're all super, super low in market cap. The volatility is insane. But again, TAO holders are incentivized to swap their tokens because they get the emissions. The emissions are crazy high right now. And again, the first halving is coming towards the end of this year. And so that's when the first big slash in new token supplies is going to come into effect. So just like Bitcoin, in the first 4 years of mining, it's the most profitable. Of course, it's the coin is insanely volatile because it's still new. It's not really being adopted yet. There's a lot of risk, right? "Quote unquote" risk. It's just a very new thing. And so, of course, we're seeing that same thing with TAO. The volatility is immense. It could be perceived as very risky, but also it could be perceived as a amazing opportunity, which is how I see it, because I'm able to just accumulate like crazy, and hopefully I will become a TAO whale down the road.
So, question about that. You're talking about these, like this mini bull market and the ecosystem and whatnot. What do you recommend people, like, should they just buy and hold TAO, or should they like partake in some of the ecosystem activities and whatnot? Also, your
So
webcam closed, by the way.
yeah, it shuts off. It's coming back on. Don't worry.
Okay.
But so essentially, I would say just dip your toe in to get TAO. But then once you get into TAO, you're going to become fascinated about these subnets, and the more you read up on them, it just makes a lot of sense for you to start holding a lot of these alpha tokens. Personally, I hold a bunch, and the returns are insane. It's like 100 to 150 APY right now, and you're earning it in this alpha token, but then you can swap into TAO. That's all you can do. You can only swap into TAO. So the denomination is TAO, right? But like, I'm not a trader, I'm an investor. That's the game I play. Maybe I'm sure a lot of your viewers are traders. They want to get in and out. You can do that, no problem. You can swap your TAO for alpha tokens. You can see it go up, go down. It's crazy volatile, but it's been on an uptrend. Most all of the tokens are all on an uptrend. But I would say just dip your toe in, like, just learn about TAO first. If you don't even know about TAO, obviously there's no point in learning about subnets, because you have to just learn what TAO is first, right? Once you get that exposure, it's a natural progression for you to want to learn about subnets and the alpha tokens and how they all work. And if you go down deep in the rabbit hole, I believe you will see a crazy opportunity, and it's hard for you to not be involved.
So that is great to hear. I love to see your conviction and bullishness for this project and ecosystem. I did share your X account in the description, but your video on TAO is in your crypto rabbit hole channel. Am I right?
Correct. Well, it's actually, I released the whole thing on my X as well. But if you go on my X, actually, I made a video with Altcoin Daily on AI, and Bittensor was a part of that as well. And I pinned that to my post. So if the viewers, if you're interested in checking that out,
yeah,
you can see it.
Go check that out. All right. I want to shift gears now. Or do you have any final things you want to say about Bittensor, or can we shift gears?
Maybe one last thing that I can share is
Okay.
one of the things that got me a lot of conviction actually is the human capital element of Bittensor. I think some of the smartest people I see online, who are just gigabrains, who I follow and I read a lot of the stuff that they put out. Some of the smartest people, they're actively part of the community. They're so bullish on TAO. And one person, for example, I'm sure many of your viewers, including yourself, will know, is Barry Silbert. Barry Silbert is the founder of Digital Currency Group. They're one of the biggest conglomerates in crypto. This guy is an OG Bitcoiner. I think he got into Bitcoin in 2011. He created Grayscale in 2013.
Yep.
Right? This guy is a multi-billionaire, a crypto multi-billionaire, and he went all in on Bitcoin. Of course, DCG also previously owned CoinDesk. Right? They also run Foundry, which is the world's biggest Bitcoin mining pool in the world, and who, by the way, Foundry has shifted gear into becoming a subnet on Bittensor. And Barry Silbert created a company a few months ago called Yuma, and Yuma's entire premise and business model is to incubate and accelerate Bittensor subnets. They're a validator on the network. So somebody who is of this stature, who is now going all in, and if you go on Barry Silbert's X on Twitter, you'll see him post about Bittensor all the time. This guy has probably more conviction than me. Like he's all in.
Yeah.
And CoinDesk even released an article of him calling Bittensor the World Wide Web of AI. And so for me, it's like the human capital. If the smartest, some of the smartest people in the world who's megally successful within this industry is actively telling you we're so early in this, you should listen. Okay,
Yeah.
that's one component. Another person that also built a lot more conviction for me is a guy named David Lawee, Lawee. Just Google this guy. Okay, you'll see that David Lawee is Google's CMO turned VP. And in 2014, he created a company called Capital G. Capital G is Google, or should I say Alphabet's third-party private equity investment arm. All they do is look at deals. He was like an early investor in Airbnb, multitudes of massive deals, and they manage over $7 billion. Obviously, this is like Google's investment arm. And David Lawee, together with Open Tensor Foundation's co-founder, the other guy that I hadn't mentioned, his name is Ala Shabana, who is a PhD from University of Waterloo. Them together created a company called Crucible Labs. And all they also do is incubate and accelerate Bittensor subnets. And within Crucible Labs, you know who also are figures within the company? There's a guy named Seth Bloomberg and Sami Kassab, who were ex-senior analysts at Masari Research. Sami Kassab actually coined the term DePIN. He's literally the guy who created the term DePIN, as we all know. And so these guys are all in on Bittensor. They completely gigabrains. Like they're the smartest people that you can think of. And these guys are full on just only in Bittensor in the crypto AI stack. So,
Nice.
you know, I think just all these different components that I've constructed in my brain, like that's why I have so much conviction, because, you know, we're only 3-4 years. This is the 4th year of Bittensor, by the way. And so this is why the halving is coming. And how I see it, I'm not a trader. Like I said, I just dollar cost average. Anytime there's a dip, I just buy it, because I'm thinking a decade from now, where is the world? What is the world going to look like? What is AI going to look like? I have no idea what AI is going to look like. I just think that from a first principle standpoint, if I look at what Bitcoin showed us, a truly well-coordinated, incentivized network that is decentralized could become bigger than any centralized counterparts.
Makes a ton of sense. Thank you so much. That was so like well put.
Thank you.
So I want to move on to a different topic now altogether, because when I was hanging out with you and Dan recently, we had some really interesting discussions about the markets and macro and where we think it's going to go. And I know you're super well read on that as well. I mean, for the viewers, I'm sure they can tell that you're well read in general. Like you dove deep in the rabbit hole for Bittensor TAO. Can you give us your general view on the markets? Because when we had this conversation like a week and a half or a week ago, you're like, you thought the worst was over. It turns out there was a little bit more worse things to come, but now it's kind of back up again. So definitely a lot of volatility in the markets, a lot of uncertainty and news-based, news-driven stuff. But what are your views on the markets and macro right now?
For sure. So I think it's impossible for anybody to say the low is in, because I think the only person in the world who has that power is Trump. Literally, whatever he says just spooks the market, right? So maybe the macro is looking up this way, but then maybe Trump will say something and it will just tank the market even more, right? So I'm not gonna. I think I can't say that I know for sure, because nobody knows. Anybody who says otherwise, it's a red flag. However, I think with that being said, from what I'm seeing is that I think this cycle actually has a high probability of mirroring Trump 1.0. So if you remember, in 2016, Trump got into office, and in 2017, we had that big ICO run up, right? But everything dictates on the business cycle. It all comes down to liquidity, right? And if you're looking at the business cycle, the best indicator, by the way, this is according to Raoul Pal in Real Vision. Okay, this is not my work. This is the stuff that I study. But Raoul Pal, to all his credit, really showed the world this macro concept. At least that's where I learned it from. And what I can share there is the business cycle. Essentially, you can look at the PMI, the Purchasing Managers Index. Okay, and what that is it is a survey that gets put out to the top supply chain managers. And it's a survey to ask them, oh, what's your outlook on the economy? How are your orders looking? What are the capital flows for the company? All these different things construct into an index. And this is, they have one for the US, they have one for China, they have one for Europe, so on and so forth, right? All the major economies all have this survey. And the survey is an index of a number. If it's over 60, that means the business cycle is peaking, and that always correlates with the peak of the crypto markets. And actually, it's not just crypto; it's all assets. If you extrapolate and you look at the PMI index, which is just like up down the cycle, and if you look at the equities performance and you look at crypto's performance, they all mirror the same thing. Why? Because it's driven by liquidity. When the PMI is over 60, that means there's a lot of confidence. There's the economy is expanding. People are getting a lot more orders. They're spending money. They're borrowing money. That's actually the biggest indicator, is that they're borrowing money maybe to buy inventory. There's a lot more demand, so on and so forth. So the global economy is healthy and expanding when the PMI is over 60. And that always correlates with the crypto markets peaking. So in 2017, I think it was 2018, January, that's when the PMI peaked, right? And then it kind of went back down. And then the only thing that threw everything off was COVID. Because COVID is an external major event.
Yeah, black swan.
It's a black swan, right? So that threw everything off. I think that made the business cycle peak much earlier. And then there was just a massive injection of liquidity. And this is why you saw in March of 2020, when you had the major black swan crash, and immediately followed by the greatest bull market we've ever seen. Why? Because central banks injected just a record high amount of liquidity, right? We're in a global... the whole world was shut down, right? Why is everything ripping so hard? It's because the central banks started to devalue the currency like crazy. And this is why you had insane inflation. And what happened in 2022 is that inflation got too out of hand, and the Fed has the mandate to curb inflation. And so they had to start jacking up rates to slow down the economy. And of course, risk assets, that's when the contracting happens. And that's when PMI also fell down. And now, if you look at the current PMI, it's actually, it's bottoming. It's still in the bottom. It's been bottoming for a while. And so there's a lot of speculation that this is what Raoul Pal was saying, is that most likely what's going to happen is that the PMI will most likely peak again around anywhere from Q4 to Q1 of next year. And
interesting.
That's why PMI is a very crucial indicator to look, because if it's over 60, then you should proceed with caution and maybe take some money off the table. That will be a great indicator of a top signal. And that's what I will be looking at. And yeah, that's essentially in a nutshell is what I'm really paying attention to. And then of course, all this tariff talk with Trump, actually one of the biggest things that I'm reading now is that China might be one of the biggest liquidity providers of this cycle. Like China essentially was saying that they're going to provide a lot of stimulus, especially with Trump, all the Trump tariff talks. They're going to provide stimulus to try to offset all the volatility from the tariffs. And that's openly discussed. I think this was news from last week. And not just that, the Federal Reserve, I think it was the Fed governor, I think his name is Christopher Waller. He also said that they're going to step in and stabilize the market if needed. That is a term for, we're going to print money and flood the market with liquidity. Don't worry, we will come and save you. And so, I think what I'm always doing is, in times like these, when there's panic, when the market is in extreme fear, I just buy this damn thing. I don't even care, because I know end of the year, liquidity is going to be, there's going to be so much liquidity that gets injected. Why? Because it's a mathematical certainty. They have to print money just to service the $37 trillion of debt that the US government has. Everybody's on the same boat. Everybody's on the same boat. You have to develop, like, there is not enough economic prosperity and productivity to actually pay off this debt. You need to print the money to actually come up with the money to pay this off. What happens then? You devalue the US dollar in fiat terms. And so what happens when that happens? I'm just repeating myself there. But essentially, when that happens, risk assets will moon, especially fixed, scarce supply assets like Bitcoin, like TAO. Maybe TAO right now has a bit high inflation, but at the end of the day, it's fixed. There's only 21 million, just about shy of 10 million circulating supply. There's only so much. And when there's a massive liquidity injection, a lot of this money will tend to go to that new shiny thing. And I think TAO is that bet.
For sure. So you're not really worried about like a recession or like just demand falling and things like that, or you just think the worst is over essentially, like with the PMI?
I think there is no such thing as recession anymore because the government can just print the money to stimulate. Period. This is what Raoul Pal says. He's like, we don't have a recession anymore because if a recession, quote unquote recession happens, the government just has to print money to stimulate, cut rates. Boom. Next thing you know, people are flooded with money. There's liquidity. There's prosperity again. Obviously, this tariff talk is spooking markets like crazy. But I think Trump is, he has his legacy to consider, right? And also, midterms are coming next year. You think he's gonna be okay with the markets being in the gutter for another year, and the midterms come along and Republicans will lose the vote because of what Trump did? I don't think so.
No, I
really don't think so.
Yeah, I agree with you.
So I think it's all short-term noise, and this is where winners win, because when you are able to look at the general view, and if you see directionally that's where it's going, then you position yourself accordingly. And so I just keep buying. And so I think the game I'm playing, I'm not a trader, like I said. My whole goal is, how do I keep increasing my income? How do I get more income to then buy these massive dips? Because over time, everything crashes upwards.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And so you just place your bet on the winners. Again, I'm not going into micro caps, the crazy high risk. I'm going in the leader of a certain sector, and I just keep piling liquidity, and the game is accumulate, and just look in a decade, which by the way, 10 years will fly by more quickly than you think. In 10 years time, you're going to be sitting on all this crypto that's been compounding over time. And I mean, just think like 10 years ago, if all you did was buy Bitcoin and you just bought the dip every single time, anytime there's a major crash, you just keep buying, no matter if in the short term you think, oh, is this going to be a recession, or like, who cares? Just keep buying. That's my whole game plan.
Yep, that makes a lot of sense. And I think I mentioned, and you mentioned as well in the beginning, that you are one of the top reps of Bitget. Anyone who follows Bitget on X and tunes into the spaces will definitely have heard of you before. But that puts you in a really unique position because Bitget's a tier 1 exchange, has a lot of retail focus, right? And you have a first row seat into kind of the dynamics of retail in this market. So what I want to ask you is, if you like, just with that like position and your unique view on retail behavior, retail activity, do you have any predictions on the future of crypto? For example, like you saw the meme coin hype wave front and center, and you were saying that a lot of times it felt like it was just fluff, and like they're just like, oh, it's community, it's vibes, blah blah blah. But then there's really nothing else more to sustain them, and kind of meme coins are dead these days, to be honest. So, like, I don't know. Do you think they're going to come back, or do you think it's going to be like NFTs, which never really did come back, or just any general? It doesn't even have to be about meme coins. Like, what are your general predictions about the future of crypto and retail and so forth?
That's it's a very interesting question. Excuse the ambulance in the back, but really fascinating. I think I really see a lot of, like I said, a lot of projects. So my role at Bitget is I was the social media host. So all I did was I made a lot of content. I host all of our spaces. I still host our spaces. But it's been a good year. Bitget's got over 100 million users. I think when I joined, we're actually at 10 million users.
Dang.
And so we've 10x in the last 2 years that I've joined. And it really has become a tier 1 exchange. When I first joined, actually, I had never heard of Bitget. When they approached me, I never heard about them. And it's crazy to see how really Bitget is a top player in the space, which is really exciting to be part of the growth. It's been a fantastic job. But yeah, like I said, I host spaces every week. I have founders come on our space. They pitch the project. I get a firsthand view, and I hear the pitch, and a lot of really exciting stuff. But also the meme coin stuff for me, it just really wasn't. It wasn't it for me. I think we have to understand human psychology, right?
Mhm.
In good times, there's going to be a lot of risk taking. People just go further and further out on the risk curve. And meme coin is that, right? They're in it for this short, quick dopamine hit of like making 10x, 100x within a few days, right? In and out kind of thing. But as I'm sure majority of the people playing meme coins, probably 90+% of people lose money, right? It's a PvP game. It's not a PvE game. It's not where like the entire space will be elevated because of some sort of disruptive tech or some sort of network adoption, right? And I think at the end of the day, that's what will get adoption, right? Is if you're really solving a specific problem, or unless you're something like Dogecoin, where you really built such a crazy community and you have people like Elon Musk backing it, and it's the attention economy, right?
Yeah.
But again, it's 80-20. Like there's only a very select few projects that will become so scalable in size that become successful. Majority of these projects will not succeed, period, right? So I think meme coins will always be around. Again, when like I really think by Q4 and Q1 of next year, things are going to get really good again. Bitcoin's probably going to go over 200K, and then the entire industry is, we're in a Valhalla, and then next thing you know, Pump That Fund is revived and meme coins start going crazy again. That's probably likely. However, with each iteration, people learn from those past mistakes and experiences, right? So maybe retail got burned on the last meme coin cycle. Maybe on the next one up, they're like, I don't want to F with this. Maybe I'll just go and buy stuff that actually has a better long-term utility. Who knows? I don't know, right? But I think for me, it's this: I stay in my lane. I find what I think has great value prop. I think I just look for projects that I think will have great potential, that will attract a lot of builders, because at the end of the day, you want to go to projects where they're attracting builders, period, because that's where the disrupting technology will come. That's where the innovation, the iteration, all those different things will come to the new attractive, high value prop project. That's kind of like what my mind is. But I think what's really exciting is that this is the first year that the U.S. government is fully behind crypto, and you're going to see complete reform in the government on crypto regulations. I mean, this really is the first wave of super mainstream adoption, right? So super exciting. I don't know what this space is going to look like. I think it's impossible to predict these things, especially with AI. I mean, the acceleration of AI is so mind-boggling. I don't even know what the future will look like in 5 years, let alone in a decade.
Yeah,
right.
makes sense.
So I think we just have to keep learning, keep reading, and keep seeing what's out there, what is gaining traction, and just know that you don't know anything, right? And you have to just keep learning, because that's one humbling lesson that I've learned. It's just, before, when I first got into crypto, I have a specific kind of mindset and bias towards what I already know. And then the longer I'm in the market, I'm like, damn, I really don't know anything. I just got to keep learning and keep figuring this out, and just keep making moves where I think will best position me for the best outcome, right? And I think that's true for everyone. So for whoever's listening, if there's one takeaway, just keep your head up and keep learning, and you'll figure it out.
Sounds good. Well, CH, that was all the topics I wanted to ask you about today. Was definitely a pleasure just diving deeper into TAO, its ecosystem. That's Bittensor for those watching. Also, your views on macro, your bullish views has got me pumped. Can't wait for that to happen on the latter half of this year. And then just your unique position as one of the top reps of Bitget. So do you have any final thoughts? I know I dropped your X profile so people can find you there and find your video on TAO there. But do you have any other closing thoughts before we wrap it up?
Hey man, again, I'm just stoked to be on here, hanging out with you. You're an amazing creator, and you do great work in that you're sharing with the world a way to level the playing field. Because I think us millennials, right, we've been through these once in a generation type events. I think this is like we've had the financial crisis, and then we had COVID, and then shit is just hitting the fan, right?
Yeah.
And I think crypto is just it's a tool, and it's a tool for you to quickly make money. Obviously, with risk comes reward, but I think that it is for you to, you are negligent if you're not looking into crypto. And like if you understand macro and you look at the business cycle and liquidity, and this is probably going to get a lot of controversy, but I think diversification is bullshit, because if you can just bet on the fastest horse and then you can weather the storm, and and if you can think long term and you just accumulate the winners, I think you're going to outperform most people who are looking to diversify, into all these different assets. And I think if you're not, in the 7-8 figures, what's the point of diversifying, right? You just want to focus a few bets, concentrate them, build so much conviction, and spend a lot of time researching and testing your hypothesis and your theories to see if it stands true. And if it doesn't, then you got to pivot right away and then maybe try something new. I think that is the way forward as a crypto investor, but this is how you create generational wealth in a very short amount of time. For me, I've shared my experience. I've been through the ups and downs. I've made FU money. I've also lost FU money. Now I'm trying to get back to FU money. And, it's just about accumulating and staying on top of things. And I hope there's great takeaways from this conversation. And my DM is open. If you guys ever want to hit me up, I'm all here. And again, Kevin, thank you so much for having me.
All right. Thank you so much, CH, and everyone for tuning in. We'll catch y'all on the next one.